Think winning the New York housing lottery is impossible? Well, it's not. You just need the right moves. And in this video, I have 5 insider tips to help you increase your chances of getting selected. Also, stay tuned until the end because tip number 3 is something that everybody neglects. Okay, so tip number 1 is to apply for the right income brackets. See, most people only apply for low income lotteries thinking that they're going to be the easiest and they get enamored with the low rents, when in reality, those are the hardest, because low income lotteries typically have the most applicants at that time. And that's because housing lotteries go by area median income, or AMI level. These levels could go anywhere between 30% on the lowest end up to 165%. And typically the lower the AMI level, the more applicants you will see there. That's why it's easier to go after middle income lotteries where the income ranges are anywhere between $70,000 to $150,000 for the entire household. But don't forget, household size also matters. So if you're a single member household that makes $80,000 a year, you actually may have a better chance of being selected than a family of 3 that also makes $80,000 a year. That's because while the family of 3 can qualify for a 2 or 3 bedroom, those apartments typically get more applications than a studio or 1 bedroom that the household of 1 makes, which means less competition, better chance of being approved. So next time you're on Housing Connect, just scroll through the available lotteries and try to see if there's any middle income lotteries that you qualify for. In my personal opinion, 80% AMI is typically when I've seen competition numbers drop. Okay, tip number 2 is to apply for buildings where you have community board preference. Did you know that in most housing lotteries, 50% of the available apartments are actually allocated to applicants who live in the area? That's called community board preference and is probably one of the biggest hacks to being selected. See, New York City actually wants the locals who already live in these neighborhoods to be able to stay in their communities. So when they do most of these housing lotteries, they allocate 50% of the apartments to community board members. Not sure how to find your community board? You can easily find it through the city's website, and I actually dropped the link down in the description. Once you click the link, select the borough that you currently live in and scroll down until you find your neighborhood. What you'll discover is that your community board may actually include other neighborhoods in there as well. Meaning if you apply for lotteries in these other neighborhoods, your application will also qualify as a community board member. And the best part about it, Housing Connect will automatically tag your application as a community board member because it cross-references the address of the lottery building to your current address on your Housing Connect profile. So be sure to keep your profiles up to date as much as you can and try to find lotteries that fit that community board preference. Okay, tip number 3 is to submit your documents ASAP, and I cannot stress this enough. Most people in Housing Connect lotteries don't get rejected based on their income. They get rejected because they're too slow. When your name is eventually pulled and you get that request for documents, you typically get 10 business days to submit your first request of documents. And what I've seen in my experience is that people tend to lollygag or completely forget, and they go day 8, day 9, even day 10 without actually submitting any documents. Then before you know it, you get that rejection email saying, hey, we never heard back from you, so we moved on. You can actually avoid this by pre-uploading some of your documents that don't need frequent uploads. These are things like your IDs, your social security cards, birth certificates for children, and your tax returns. Do not upload any documents that need to be updated on a bi-weekly or monthly basis, like your bank statements or your pay stubs. Tip number 4, apply for set-aside apartments if you qualify. Did you know that in every housing lottery, there is a certain number of apartments that are actually physically altered for people with certain needs? Well, these are set-aside apartments, and they're typically for anybody who has any kind of visual, hearing, or mobility impairment. And these apartments are physically altered to fit the individual needs of these applicants. For instance, somebody with a mobility impairment can apply for an apartment where there are extra grab bars in the bathrooms, and there's also open areas underneath the sinks to accommodate a wheelchair. Whereas people with visual impairments may get an apartment where the smoke alarms or the doorbells will cause the lights to flicker as an alert whenever they're activated. And the thing about these apartments is that they have the fewest amount of applicants go through them, meaning your chances of getting them are actually higher, but only if you qualify. So if you do, be sure to check yes when asked if you have any kind of visual, hearing, or mobility impairment when you're filling out your application on Housing Connect. Be sure to note, if you do get selected, there is a document that you're gonna need filled out by your doctor, essentially confirming your mobility, hearing, or visual impairment. And tip number 5 is to essentially keep applying. And I know this is going to be annoying because you've probably been applying for months or even years, but the housing lottery is just that, a lottery. At the end of the day, this is just a numbers game. The more applications you have out there, the better your chances of being selected. So what if you get rejected 100 times? So what if you get waitlisted 1,000 times? All you need is one yes to have the apartment that you wanted. It's out there. You just got to keep applying for it. Now you know my 5 tips on how to increase your chances of getting picked in the lottery. But I have a question. Have you started applying? How's it going? Let me know in the comments because I want to hear your experiences. And watch this video next to avoid the 7 biggest mistakes that people make on Housing Connect.